cutting you in this serious subject. Remember, if you lose your sense of humor, you are beaten before you get started. I have asked Mr. Fletcher to give you an address and telephone number for anyone that wants to order more videos or information. I asked you not to copy this tape, but to tell friends how they may get one for Mr. Fletcher. The only way he can complete the next project is with your help with the sale of the videos. Anyone who wishes to donate to help Mr. Fletcher, please contact me. Your donations or gifts are not tax deductible. I repeat, they are not deductible. But we hope you pay next to nothing to the IRS anyhow. Whoever they think they are. Write to me at Howard, Kev, World News Insight, 10061, Riverside Drive, number 801, North Hollywood, California, 91602. I can't believe I am an intelligent computer stuck in California tape.
Well, we're back again. Can you imagine being interrupted by a robotic computer? That's all we need. I got enough trouble trying to talk to the Senate and the Congress, and I got robots and computers to be concerned with. How far might we go with bionics? How far might we go with implants? Let me show you a little bit of footage relative to the installation potentially of micro cameras in eyes, replacement of eyes. Well, if you have somebody that's having problem with hearing, and you're having problems with sight, person's blind in one eye or whatever, this potential concept is fantastic. Again, it's a two-sided coin. But let me show you a little bit about what they're working on. They're saying they're working on it, so that means, again, we have to remember in the covert world, they probably have already completed some of what you're about to see as embryonic, starting out into bionics of eyes and limbs, hands, legs, arms. Watch this for a moment.
To construct an artificial eye, scientists are studying how the visual cortex handles information. When an image enters the eye, it is focused by the lens onto the retina, an area at the back of the eye that transforms the visual image into electrical signals. These then travel along the optic nerve to the visual cortex at the back of the brain. As nerve cells are stimulated, the brain deciphers the image. Scientists here in Salt Lake City have been developing a bionic eye for the last 30 years.
A video camera mounted on a pair of spectacles to record the visual scene in front of a blind individual. The output of that video signal would be processed through electronics, and they would go through a connector which would be mounted on the patient's skull, and the connector would go through lead wires to an electrode array which would be implanted on the visual part of the brain.
This microchip contains 100 electrodes, which should provide 100 dots of light. Their next model will have 625 electrodes. But the human eye is wired to analyze over 1 million points of light, so there is still a long way to go. Boston, ophthalmologist Joe Rizzo and engineer John Wyatt are trying a different approach. This time, the TV signal will not go directly to the brain, but will be sent by a laser into the eye.
Okay.
Once inside the eye, The laser beam will be turned into electrical signals by a solar panel on the back of the lens. The signals are then sent to a microchip on the retina, which stimulates the nerve cells that lead to the brain. The microchip that sits on the retina has 10,000 transistors on it. It's nearly as complicated as a color TV, but smaller than the pupil of the eye. The key to building such sophisticated chips is a technique called microfabrication. The lasers are so precise, they can print the entire Encyclopedia Britannica on a pinhead. Electronics will be small enough to fit the camera inside a false eye, so the brain will be able to control eye movement. In the future, the bionic eye could be fitted with a zoom lens and action replay.
Tissue engineering, talking about growing body parts, human body parts. Here we see a mouse in the laboratory that has grown an ear under his skin in the exact shape and form of a human ear under his skin. Now this is fantastic for body parts replacements. The story was kind of interesting. It struck me where he says, excuse me, having grown this human ear under his skin, the mouse is doing fine. Now I don't know if they asked the mouse or not, but here's a chance where you might be able to pick up a few bucks. I'm not sure, but there's little factories, of course, that'll be producing these, and possibly the very next time that you have a mouse problem at the house or out at the ranch and you have a couple extra mice that you discover, you might want to go out in the back where you've located your little mice problem and think of how much you could make if you could sell these little mice off to the local laboratory that's doing the tissue engineering. Let's see, and there's a lot of ears running around there. Now this lady's going to go on into her little mouse problem, and what you have to do is be careful and select one like she has, and don't be distracted by any of the other ones in the living room, and ship it off, and maybe they would pay you to grow an ear underneath your favorite mouse. I can't think of anything much more disgusting than that. But watch this tissue engineering.
The new technology is called tissue engineering, and it exploits the human body's natural ability to regenerate itself. Advanced Tissue Sciences in California is the world's first skin factory. They use a readily available raw material, circumcised foreskins. The company has attracted so much investment that the president, Gail Naughton, has become the $24 million woman.
The expansion potential of the cells is really quite amazing. You're dealing with young, healthy tissue. So from one small sample, one foreskin sample, you can get enough cells to make 250,000 square feet of final product, which is about 6 football fields worth of product.
The first stage is to expand the population of foreskin cells from 1 million to several hundred million by growing them in cultures. Then the cells are inserted into a system of cartridges known as a bioreactor. Inside each cartridge, the cells become attached to a mesh-like scaffold where they begin to divide and grow. The cells feel so at home, they form perfect human skin.
So by tricking them to thinking that they're in the body, they recreate a normal tissue within this bioreactor or tissue factory. We can then freeze this tissue and ship it off to the burn center or the wound care center where it's used for transplantation.
on the success of the skin factories, the tissue engineers are now starting to grow other tissue. This is human cartilage. This is a tissue-engineered heart valve, living and working in a bioreactor. The next step is to grow whole organs in the lab. And this will involve growing several different types of tissue simultaneously. Each organ will need a vascular system to deliver food and oxygen to keep it working. It will also need the pipework to get rid of its waste.
These are a little bit far off, but if you go and you look at how, in fact, we've been able to learn how to grow skin, muscles, ligament, tendon, cartilage, and bone, all separately, we believe that someday we will, in fact, be able to go and grow an entire human limb.
The tissue engineers have calculated it would take 8 weeks to grow a human limb. It could then be surgically attached to the rest of the body.
Certainly, if you look at all the advancements being made by genetic engineering and tissue engineering, it seems very possible that we can make a tissue that has super properties.
Selecting and manipulating genes could be the way to build a superhuman.
You can look at a scenario where a robot loses part of its body, but can simply clip another part of its body in. If they have a problem that can be corrected, they're almost immortal. We'll be able to build robots that are as intelligent as humans and interact with us as humans do, and will become indistinguishable from humans. And I don't think this is going to happen in the very short term, but eventually down the line, I believe that that's what's going to happen.
So this brings us back to the cyborg concept, the idea of half human, half mechanical, half electronic, or an electronic brain, or the humanoid type that's brain has been taken over totally by some type of an insert or an implant or electronically controlled. If you'll remember earlier, we had the scientists that said that NATO had wanted and had requested from him a report on the creation of cyborgs. Now, this scientist was never told why they wanted that report, but nonetheless, the NATO, which is absolutely the enforcing arm, the military arm, if you will, the controlling, forcing arm of the New World Order. And they wanted to know all applications for possible cyborgs. Now, the question is, again, as we create the possibility of totally controlled humanoid types, who will be doing the controlling? Who will be doing the programming? And how much pre-programmed mind control or chip inserts or total mind inserts would there be in these humanoid-type cyborgs? Well, let's get a look here. I want you to see the very beginning, the very first of the electronic controls by Dr. Delgado, who was early brought on several years ago by the government to do electronic manipulation of the brain from an external source. And I want to get into that, and then that proceeds to what we have presently functioning, which is an operation called Commando 1 that's taking place right now, has worked for a few years, and this is complete control of the mind of an entire city, state, or county area. This is really something. But first, let's go to Dr. Delgado. Here is the footage, a couple of stills of Dr. Delgado. Delgado, in his left hand, over here, as you can see it, has a small electronic mechanism. And right there you can see this little tiny gizmo like a transistor radio. This is several years ago under the Operation Mind Control that Delgado was working on electronic equipment that could be utilized to control armies and everyone, so to speak. He actually made this statement before the U.S. Congress. And here's a bull that's about to charge him. He's irritated the bull with that, waving that cape in front of him. Now, if you'll notice here in this shot, Delgado has switched on the electronic signal from that little piece of equipment in his hand. He's dropped the cape, and the bull, being confronted with this signal, slams his brakes on. This bull is completely controlled and stopped dead by Dr. Jose Delgado. The bull actually reversed direction with this piece of equipment. He simply pressed the button, and the bull was stopped dead in his path. A total mind control. Delgado, speaking to the Senate and the Congress several years ago, said that we can control all the armies and the working class with electronic control mechanisms.
Commando Solo. This is the aircraft, the C-130s, that are loaded up with mind control equipment. What do we mean by that? Well, for one thing, it overrides all television and radio in terms of transmission. By flying over a given country, a city, state, or whatever, you can send as many as you would want to cover as much territory as necessary at any point in time. Most recently, Commando Solo was used in the Bosnia elections. They were worried that they weren't going to come out the manner that they wanted to because there was information getting out from a contrary source. So they sent in 3 of the Commando Solo C-130 aircraft to fly over Bosnia the week prior to the elections and did their job so that the elections would come out the manner that they wanted them to. Watch this as scientists talking about some of the same equipment and what he could do, or we could do, or can be done to change or alter the mindset of an entire nation.
War would be so secret, so invisible, so undetectable, you'd never know your mind was under attack. At Laurentian University in Ontario, Canada, a young student is about to undergo one of the strangest experiences of her life. They're hooking Denise's brain up to an electroencephalograph, or EEG machine. For 30 to 40 minutes, this will monitor her brain waves, while these electric coils attached on either side of her head will immerse her brain in an electromagnetic field. Her brain actually completes the circuit between the 2 coils. The field pulsing through her brain is less powerful than when given off by a digital clock radio, but acutely controlled and focused at specific parts of the brain. It will open Denise's mind to outside suggestion by this man.
Going to do a switch to see right left hemisphere.
Dr. Michael Persinger is a professor of psychology and neuroscience. He's designing ways to put the power of mind control to good use. Dr. Persinger's research focuses on brain trauma, and he uses carefully controlled doses of electromagnetic radiation to induce relaxation and alleviate pain.
So what Sandra did was to initiate a opiate-releasing pattern. That's a burst-firing field that is stimulated once every 4 seconds. And that produces relaxation and a very pleasant sensation. Similarly, using the appropriate fields, we can induce fear and apprehension, but clearly that would be unethical in that setting.
Dr. Persinger's tests suggest that carefully programmed electromagnetic frequencies can tap into individual brains and influence people's emotions.
The cognitive processes of the human brain are really quite simple. And if you understand how they work, you can make entire populations think and decide the manner in which you wish.
Many experts are skeptical of such an Orwellian scenario, but Persinger thinks the implications are chillingly real.
Suppose you generate a field that produces fear, fundamental fear, in large numbers of people. And then, over the television, more traditional ways, you say, the reason we're having this fear is because of this particular group. And now you start to move the population believing in a direction that you wish.
To influence 250 million people, the equivalent of the entire population of the United States, may not be that difficult. According to Dr. Persinger, we already have the technology, satellites on TV and radio transmitters. Mind control may already be happening. We know the mysterious PSYOPs plane can beam persuasive sounds and pictures into people's television sets. Will it someday beam disturbing frequencies directly into the mind? Mind control would be the ultimate non-lethal weapon.
Here is the head of Commando Solo taking us on board the craft and showing us the equipment, etc. But he's going to make a statement basically telling you where they have already used this. They've already used this equipment in several places. Do you ever wonder why, when the Pope went back and visited in 1997, here just a few months back, and went to visited Iran and Iraq, where basically the Muslims, I would say the Pope would be bottom man on their popularity list. In fact, they threw flowers at his feet, and 500,000 people greeted him cheering. And the interview with an Iraqi live at the scene, the Iraqi said, he has come for peace for all of us. These are Muslims that a year or two back would have planned the demise of the Pope as part of a religion that they certainly were against. By using the C-130 mind-altering aircraft, they have changed the attitude and the minds of thousands and thousands of people. Watch this. This is the commander himself of the operation.
Recently, this operation was totally classified, what the military calls black. This is the first time they've allowed a camera crew to record their highly sensitive capabilities. They are pirates of the airwaves, able to infiltrate media channels around the world. They can broadcast on AM, FM, military radio frequencies, and most television systems. A trailing wire 600 feet long broadcasts FM signals, while another drops 600 feet from the belly of the aircraft and transmits AM frequencies. Several planes make up the PSYOPs unit called Commando Solo. They can be refueled in the air, giving them virtually unlimited range. As part of Operation Desert Storm, PSYOPs broadcasts helped persuade Iraqi troops to surrender. But Operation Uphold Democracy in Haiti in October 1994 is its biggest success so far. The U.S. military's mission was to back ousted President Jean-Bertrand Aristide in overthrowing the de facto military regime. Commando Solo broadcast messages in Creole. Appeals for calm were interspersed with news panel discussions and local music. Other broadcasts were aimed at stemming refugee flotillas. Messages informed them they would not be allowed to enter the United States.
We were able to turn off the refugees, prepare the country, and to provide an alternative to invasion so that when Aristide did return, it was a peaceful return of a legitimate power. And that is the ultimate goal of psychological operations. We were able to basically win a contingency, I wouldn't call it a war, without firing a shot.
Paradoxically, the promise of truly bloodless war may come only with the most devastating weapon of all. If the human mind and will become the battleground of the future, War 2020 may be won without so much as a whimper, let alone a bang.
Dr. Persinger made reference to the ability to frighten 260 million people being afraid of a specific group. What group was he referring to? The militia or the patriot groups? Let's listen to him one more time and see what he's talking about.
We generate a field that produces fear, fundamental fear, in large numbers of people. And then, over the television, more traditional ways, you say, the reason we're having this fear is because of this particular group. And now you start to move the population believing in a direction that you wish.
So where has this extreme technology come from? Starting from lighting matches and shooting little rockets into the air, to having the ability to launch spaceships into outer space, put satellites up around the entire Earth to surround us with high technology, to do regular launches on a regular basis and create actual space laboratories floating around the Earth and go to the moon. Where did this technology come from? Was it a normal progression? Was it a normal progression through scientific discoveries in the last 50 years? Or did the world get some kind of a jump start on micro-technology back some point in time and around in the 40s? And of course you have all of those people that would say that that jump start came from alien technology. And you can't, because of the information that's been available, we can't throw cold water on that possible concept. The idea that behind Area 51, this technology has been back engineered from someplace else. There always is that possibility. Now we're going to cover that extensively in the brand new videotape that's titled The President's Papers on UFOs. And this is a brand new videotape, will be available in November. But for example, this Russian craft that has been designed and will be finished here in about 1998, 8 months from now. This huge kind of a flying saucer, which both the United States and Russia had been dabbling in. This was the original rough footage of one of their first flights with it. This craft will carry 2,500 people. Where did the technology come from? Again, you constantly have to just look back. In the early 50s, this is a floating platform experimentation of charged atmosphere, actually utilizing charging ions in the atmosphere to float this frame. Well, that looks pretty simple in terms of size and weight, but the very concept has been carried on to the drawing board to the ion-charged vehicle, similar to what you're looking at here in a artist conception. However, these are being worked on. But how far back was ion charging and that type of project? And when did it start? And where did we get the starting blocks for this? This is an actual book written by the United States. This is done by the Atomic Energy Commission. This was done in the 50s. It covers a period of time of 1950 up through 1958. Now, the Atomic Energy Commission at that time, which presently would be NASA, put this book together, and was interesting because it was a very public book. It was public distribution. And in the book, they show what laboratories they were working on with plasma charging, ion charging, and these high exotic atomic derived energies that they were testing at that time. Of course, the old Oak Ridge laboratories, where they've created so many of the microwave and laser weapons, Los Alamos and Livermore laboratories, where they've done the weather control productions of secret products out of there for weather control. And here shows you the Oak Ridge laboratories that were back in the 50s, now early 50s, working on ion source technology and the charging of ions and plasma ions. This is all the technology related to magnetic fields, etc., that they are using at the HAARP installations in 3 different locations around the world relative to weather control, the electronic charging. And if you'll notice, much of the work here, they say, was carried out prior to 1954. So someplace between 1947, when the Roswell crash theoretically took place, and we theoretically captured a flying saucer or 2 from someplace else, from that point forward, we started working on molecular ion ignition systems. We started working on the weapon concept of shockwave experimentations, which are all the experiments and the products that you've seen here on this video, just now in its final completed stage. The idea of magnetic mirrors and the illumination and use of plasma charges and magnetics to alter plasma charges and bring them down to a concentrated laser. This is one of the drawings out of the book, a diagram that was done in the 50s now. You have to remember now, the first television was not presented to the United States until 1949. That was when we first had TV. And those were old vacuum tube concepts. And at the same time, within a couple of years, we're talking about charged plasma sources, particle ray guns, magnetics, and included kinetic energy as heat. And these, again, are the kinetic weapons that we're now having put before us all around the world by the secret government. Where has this technology come from?
So will the one world government succeed? Will Big Brother have the opportunity to keep an eye on all of us every day, every minute of the day, never missing a single activity of our lives? Will they control every bit of our lives? I don't know. My concern is that they will complete one world government and that they will have an unelected officials, a parliamentary, non-representative government controlling the world. Well, people ask me, they say, Bob, why do you continue doing what you're doing? Why do you keep going on with this? Well, hopefully you've gotten some information this evening that'll be helpful, maybe frightening, but maybe helpful to you so you'll know what's going on. I figure if I yell long enough and I yell loud enough, maybe it'll make a difference. Maybe enough people will hear.
It's very important that we all remember one point, and that is that the government is not the enemy. They are not the bad guys. We don't have to fear our government. We have to fear those specific people in government that are corrupted. Those are the ones we are concerned with. Remember, in the United States, we are the government until we let it totally fall apart in front of our eyes. Your job is to spread the word the best you can every single day and to prepare your friends, family, and neighbors for the future. You, as a patriot, you are the heroes. All the military men that have laid their lives down for freedom and for the American people in the past, they are the heroes. Remember, you are forever the heroes.
If I could send a message to our troops at home and far away, I would make one small promise. Hear me now. This is what I say. You are forever hero. We won't forget you. We know the sacrifice you've made. Forever hero. God bless and keep you. You're the you in the you. liberating strife. Who more than self their country love and mercy more than strife. America, America, God shed His grace on thee. And round thy good with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. Forever hero, we won't forget you. We know the sacrifice you made. Forever hero, God bless and keep you. You're the youth in the You can hear it in the distance, you can feel it in the air, you can tell the time is coming, you can sense it everywhere. You can see it in the faces, all around you'll see the signs. America is changing, and freedom's on the line. Will you be among the patriots? Will you stand among the brave? Will you heed the call? Give your all. Will you for the USA?